Here are three interesting lineups that have stood out to me so far this season. The Atlanta Hawks. Trae Young is going to miss 4 weeks with a sprained MCL, and the Atlanta Hawks already lost on Sunday, their first game without Trae. But so far this season, they've done pretty well statistically without Trae Young. With Trae Young on the floor, they're posting a 114 offensive rating and a 123.2 defensive rating, so that's a minus 9.2 net. And then with Trae off the floor, their offense is worse, 108.5 offensive rating, but their defense is dramatically better, a 107.5 defensive rating, a +1 net rating. Small samples, of course, still, but how do you expect the Hawks to perform these next 4 weeks without Trae Young?
So, first of all, I was just generally disappointed in the Hawks to start the season, even when Trae was on the floor. Yeah. And, I get it. Trae's not a good defender, and Trae in this season has had some lowlights, and there have been stretches where he's been harmful, but they're not this bad. They shouldn't be this bad on defense when Trae's on the floor. They should be able to play better than they did. So overall, I was just kind of generally disappointed. That said, the version of the team with Trae off the floor is very much a defense to transition team that forces a lot of turnovers and gets up the floor in transition. And so I think it just kind of allows them to essentially just have a higher floor when Trae's off the floor, because there's this kind of general expectation with their athleticism, their ability to force turnovers, and their ability to run. What concerns me is it's just dark times for ball handling once you get off of Trae Young. Kristaps Porzingis has had a good start to the season attacking post-ups, and he's doing some damage there. Nickeil Alexander-Walker has been okay in his pick and roll reps, but to me, Jalen Johnson is still not a guy that you're going to give the ball in the half court and have him break down a defense. He's very much a transition weapon and an attack with an advantage kind of weapon. And so I think it's just going to be really hard for them to keep things afloat with the utter lack of ball handling. And one of the things that happens, and I think we've seen this a little bit with Phoenix even to start this year, because I was higher on Phoenix's defense to start the year. They've been okay in the half court in particular, but one of the things that happens is when you can't score, it gets discouraging for your defense. And you're constantly playing in transition on defense, and you don't have your defense set as often, and you're not as locked in and engaged because you don't believe as much in what you're doing because you're not scoring on the other end of the floor. I think it can have a trickle down effect. And so I'm actually, even with the lineup data you presented, I'm a little worried about the Hawks over the course of this month without Trae.
I am too. I think you nailed it with the lack of creation aside from Trae. And I think if Dyson Daniels had more point guardy qualities, you'd feel better. But even Dyson Daniels has been off to a bit of a sluggish start so far this season offensively. But ultimately, it is going to be – I think they're going to struggle without Trae. I'll just say that clearly. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how some of these guys perform without him, though. I'm excited to see Jalen Johnson with increased opportunity and more on his plate. I can't wait to see Dyson Daniels tap into some of the stuff with him as a point guard we saw at lower levels. Does that develop? By the end of the month, is Daniels able to do more with the ball in his hands with that increased opportunity? Some of these guys, even Risache, those touches are going to trickle down to guys like him who typically play more off ball as a complementary piece. And so that's where I think for the Hawks, maybe it could end up a blessing in disguise by the end of the month, even if you lose a few more games than you would have with Trae, because there's a lot of talent on the roster. There's a lot of good players on this Hawks team, which is why people were so bullish on them entering the season. But I do think they're going to struggle at the end of the day. Let's move on to the Boston Celtics. So I'm looking at lineup data preparing for today's segment, and I see the Celtics pop up. So this season they've had 3 different starting lineups, but the four guys have started every game, and that is Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Neemias Queta, and Peyton Pritchard. And those teams, that 4 so far this season is outscoring opponents by 22.2 points per 100 possessions. They have a 126.1 offensive rating, a 103.9 defensive rating. We're dealing with small samples here. The Celtics are 3-4, but I've been impressed by the starters, regardless of who that 5th guy has been in there, whether it's Hauser or whether it is Gonzalez, whoever it may be, or Josh Minott, who's had some great games for Boston so far. Are the Celtics secretly better than their record indicates, Jason?
I think so. I think, first of all, they should have won the Sixers game. That one, they toasted off over the final few possessions. The Rockets game was kind of weird because Houston had like the craziest jump shooting game I've seen from them. I think I had Okogie, Amen Thompson, and Tari Eason at 8 for
Oh,
12
wait.
from
Oh,
3.
you mean the opening night Sixers game? Just to be clear, opening
Yeah,
night.
the
'Cause
opening night Sixers game.
yeah, opening.
Yeah,
Okay, just because I
I'm
know
sorry. I
some
should
people
have
are going to have
clarified that. The
some
game
people
where
are
they
going to have
went
the
to the high
Halloween
post.
game. Yes.
Yeah. So
Because they
the game
almost
where they
blew
ran up
that
into
other
those
game
like
too.
yeah, they handled the Sixers up until the end. Yeah, obviously that game was crazy too. But the game on opening night, they kind of like were spamming that Jaylen Brown high post up, and he just had a couple of bad possessions, and they ended up toasting that game off. But like they had the Houston game, they dealt with some crazy jump shooting disparity. Like Houston sneaky has shot the ball really well for a team that like has had a lot of question marks surrounding their jump shooting to start the year. But that like and obviously in that game they couldn't score the ball as well. But overall, there's been a lot of things that I think have been strong indicators. Like the group that you mentioned, the starting group, this Pritchard, Derek White, Jaylen Brown group, they run a lot of really smart sets. They get the ball moving side to side, and they do generate good advantages. Neemias Queta, I've been like really impressed with him to start the season. He's like been very active on defense and has been flying around all over the place and making things happen. The biggest issue is they can't defensive rebound to save their lives. And I do think that we've seen I think this season in a lot of ways has been a reminder of just how versatile and valuable Jason Tatum was, in the sense that he was a big part of their ability to generate quality jump shots, and they've had to take a lot more like questionable contested jump shots. And I think that's shown in their efficiency. They've dropped from 6th to 21st in overall jump shooting efficiency, according to Synergy. They're also like that defensive rebounding piece we just mentioned them getting smashed on the glass. That's a big thing that Jason Tatum used to help with. I think that Joe Mazzulla has done a nice job trying to like capitalize on margin with this group. Like he knows that they're limited defensively in the front court, so he's swarming drivers and forcing teams to kick out. They're giving up more threes, but they've been the best paint defense in the league to start the season. And then on the other end of the floor, still generating as many threes as they have. It's just like kind of manufacturing as much advantage and margin as they can with the limitations that they have. And they do have a very strong group of perimeter playmakers. And so like I generally have been impressed by them. I think for Boston in particular, to me, they've looked like what I expected this season. A team that has clear talent deficiencies at key position groups, but that has demonstrated a very strong basketball culture that has given them a chance to compete every single night. And we're learning, right? Like we're getting to see some, like it's very interesting to see Josh Minot kind of just this big athlete who plays hard and that runs in transition and that can guard the ball a little bit. Like that's a super valuable thing in the context of all these perimeter players. Anthony Simons, it's like, okay, the pull-up shooting's fun, but he can't really get to the basket. That's been a little bit of an issue in the early part of the season. And so it's kind of like proving to be a little petri dish of like experimenting with what the future version of the Celtics will look like.
Yes, and you mentioned that Houston game, their most recent loss, 128-101 to Houston. In that game, Houston shot 19 of 29 from three, 65.5%. And just going to point out for listeners 2 weeks ago who might have poked fun at me for saying I was going to buy the dip on Reed Shepherd's stock after opening night. He's shooting 44.4%. 5.4 3-pointers per game. Just saying, Reed Shepherd looking a lot better, a lot more comfortable since his stinker of an opening night against the best defense in basketball by far in the Oklahoma City Thunder. OKC makes everybody look bad. The Clippers. This is our last topic here, Jason. The Clippers. One of the things I was most excited to watch so far entering the season was the two big lineups that the Clippers would use. They've actually used it a lot more than I actually anticipated, with John Collins being added, Brook Lopez being added, replacing Ben Simmons, who's not even a 5, as their backup bigs. So far this season, Zubats and John Collins have shared the floor for 36 minutes. The Clippers have a plus 7.3 net rating. Brook Lopez and John Collins have shared the floor for 77 minutes. The Clippers have a minus 0.6 net rating, so pretty close to even. Overall, though, with the two big lineups, the Clippers are in the pluses. Really, they've only done Zubats as a solo big. You haven't seen much of just Collins or just Lopez on the floor. But I'm curious, Jason, what have been your early impressions of the Clippers' two big lineups, and how do you think it does change the fortunes of this team potentially moving forward?
Well, it makes them more physically imposing. By the way, one of the things I thought was interesting, I pulled the lineup data from Cleaning the Glass, which filters out garbage time, and they have Zubats and Collins at plus 14 per 100 possessions.
Filtering out garbage time. Huh.
There must have been a garbage time stinker in there for that lineup. But anyway, the biggest thing that stood out to me, like just in general, the team has been awesome with John Collins on the floor. And I think part of the thing that has been really good for this particular team is the Clippers have come out a little lethargic to start the season. I think it stems from their stars and kind of trickles down, but they've been a little lethargic, a little bit like not quite as locked in as you would have expected for this veteran team that kind of loaded up over the summer. And what John Collins has brought is like high motor athleticism. Like he's running his lane in transition constantly. He's rolling hard out of ball screens. He's doing damage as an offensive rebounder. He's just a athletic wrecking ball around the basket. And when you combine that with a team that has the kinds of shot creators they do that attract so much attention, and by the way, this is where the too big piece comes in. Zubats is a monster on the roll. And so when he's going into the basket and when you're trying to keep him off the glass and keep him out of deep seals and you're devoting all this extra attention to him, it opens up these like runways for John Collins to shoot into as an athlete. And he's just having a lot of success there. I think high motor athleticism around super talented offensive players has always been kind of like a market inefficiency in the NBA because those dudes are never getting paid attention to because of the attention you have to devote to the highly refined offensive players. And so I think John Collins has just kind of been like a clear demonstration of that. High motor athlete that just does a ton of damage at the rim off of the attention the other guys grab in every facet of the game, in the half court, in ball screens, in offensive rebound situations, and in transition.